House needs painting, grass needs mowing, where's he at?
Hi, this is Hank. Sorry I missed your call. Leave me your name and your number and I'll get back to you.
He's gone fishing.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Mossy Oak and Liqua Molly.
Welcome to Off the Water with Hank Parker. I'm your co-host, Sarah Beth, and you are?
I'm Hank Parker, and we're excited. Another podcast. Hey, I enjoy these podcasts. I hope you do, Sarah Beth.
Sure do. I sure do. I learn so much every week.
Hey, we got a lot of new listeners, and we get letters, and I appreciate everybody writing in. And it's encouraging because when you do a podcast, you really don't know if people don't respond and write you a little note here and there and ask some questions. You really don't know how many people out there are paying attention. You got your numbers. You see how many people are tuning in for at least a little while, but those cards and letters out there in radio land, as the old preachers used to talk about, keep sending them cards and letters because we like to be encouraged. So appreciate that. I do deeply appreciate people responding, and we get some great comments, and we get some not so nice, but
I know. Takes a lot of restraint for me, just so you know.
Oh, I can get it. I can see how people make fun of me. Just looking in the mirror, I realize God's got a sense of humor. All right, today we're going to talk about. Hey, I just got back from New York. I met a guy named Will Clute, and Will is a Mohawk Indian. And they have this incredible reservation up there in upstate New York, probably about 60 or 70 miles from Plattsburgh, New York, right there on the Canadian border. Matter of fact, a part of the reservation is in Canada, a part is in the United States. And Will has we've become great friends, and he's given me the invitation to come up and fish. So New York has a bass fishing season, and you can't fish until like June 16th. But on the reservation, Will, who is a part of the tribal council, they set their own rules and regulations, and they don't close the waterways. You can fish year round. Now it's all catch and release. It's a conservation season, but you're allowed to go and fish whenever you want to, basically, if you have an invitation from the reservation. And so Will has been great to extend that to me. So we go up and we get to fish in New York waters before the normal season comes in, as long as we stay on the waters in the reservation. And they got thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of water. So you can run all day long and still be on the reservation. Pretty incredible place. But anyway, we go up and get to fish, and then I came home from New York. Now I had a bunch of friends went with me. I had Boone and Cade, Hank Parker Jr.'s two boys, and had Hank Parker Jr., my good friend Keith Hawthorne, and Colonel Bill Mullins. And we all go up as a group, and we had fun. But you learn a lot because you're fishing different baits. And they fish with different fishermen, local fishermen that have knowledge, and they fish with different baits. So there's a lot to be learned from all the information. And we come in at night. We talk about how many fish we caught. We share pictures. And we talk about what methods that worked and how we caught our fish. And so there's just a ton of information there that you wouldn't have if I went up alone. If it was just me, then the only data I have is what I collected, and so I would think I was the world's greatest fisherman. I think I caught the biggest fish, and I thought I caught the most fish I could have caught. And then when we come back and we all sit down and we share photographs and we have dinner, I realize I caught the smallest fish. I caught less fish than anybody else. And they did something completely different than I did. And it's just a pool of information that you would get if you fished a tournament.
Yeah.
You know, when you fish tournaments and you don't fish tournaments and then you start fishing them, you always had those days that you went out on the water and you fished all day long and you didn't catch them. So in your mind, And what you told everybody else, boy, they just wasn't biting today. The day was a bad day. We had a high pressure. The wind was blowing, or it was cloudy, or it was raining, or there was lightning, there was thunder. Whatever in the world you come up with, there's always excuses on why they weren't biting.
Mm-hmm. Excuses.
And you believe that. I mean,
Right.
you don't know any better. But then you get in a bass tournament and you figure, boy, me and my partner, we fished hard and we threw everything in the tackle box and we didn't catch any fish, so the fish weren't biting. And you come to the weigh-in and there's Larry Nixon over there with 40 pounds. And you think, oh, my Lord.
Dang.
They were biting. I just didn't figure it out. So that information is critically important to being able to collect enough data to make you a better fisherman. And so that's what we do up there in New York. We have a whole group, and Will is a very seasoned fisherman, and he guides every day. So in addition to my group, there's probably 6 or 7 more people that are doing different things as well. So we learn a lot. Mm-hmm. And I say all of that because I came back from New York and I went down to Lake Murray all by myself and fished all day long. Got down there before daylight and I fished all day long. And I've been doing this now for quite some time. I've been going to New York for 5 years, and I've been really thinking about how fishing has changed. And I watch the elite Bassmasters on television. I watch the Major League Fishing events, and then I watch some high school events. Fishing has changed dramatically, whether we like it or whether we don't. And it's a lot different on a public waterway that gets a pressure day in and day out versus fishing on a reservation that is more controlled, less boats,
Low
and less pressure.
Yeah, a lot of low pressure.
And so low pressure in people, not the air.
Yeah, well, I will say that's big. I know a lot of reservations are big on conservation anyhow, especially conservation of wildlife. I feel like if we had that same mentality that we do to our waterways, they would look a lot better than what they do. You
can't figure out a solution when you have public water and you have a population of people that we have and it's public. You can't regulate and say, okay, you can fish, but you can't fish or whatever. It's just the way it is.
Right.
And I wouldn't change it if I could. You know, we talked about this in an earlier podcast about how people wanted to petition to get personal watercraft off the water because they're aggravating the fishermen, or get rid of wakeboards.
Yeah, but it's who's to say that the fisherman has more right over the water than the...
Exactly. That's my point. So I wouldn't change anything if I could. If you water ski, you have every right to go to Lake Murray that I have. If you like to ride personal watercraft, you got every right that I have. And I wouldn't want to change that. And I'll fight to defend your rights because it's fair. And that's a democracy. And that's what we should do for each other.
Right.
So even though I don't have a personal watercraft, I don't water ski.
Yeah.
I sure will defend your rights to do that. So that's public water. Well, also I'll defend your right to go fishing. Mm-hmm. So there's tons of boats. I went to Lake Murray yesterday. I got down there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's a weekday, and there was a line of boats, people putting in on a weekday, no tournament, no nothing. I mean, it's just a pile of people. And the lake gets fished all the time. And it's just the nature of what's going on with our population and the popularity of fishing. So fishing has changed. Fishing has changed dramatically. And with all the negativity that takes place with people that don't like change, don't like all the technology, I'm telling you, if you don't embrace change, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you. And people don't like that. They don't want to hear it. They want to say, we need to ban all this. We need to get rid of it. It's wrong. It's messing up fishing. Hey, I understand all of it. And I have really tried to be very careful. I don't worry necessarily about political correctness, but I worry about getting it right.
Right.
And I will agree, it has really changed tournaments. Golly, bomb, it has changed them. And there are some great fishermen that are not doing well opposed to fishermen that may have less ability. And I say may have. I don't want to open that up. But there's some really great seasoned fishermen that are unbelievably accomplished that are not doing well against fishermen that may be single-sidedness or have one particular method that is dominating because of electronics that make them bring more fish to the scales, even though they may not have the versatility and ability to read water as some of these veterans that are not bringing as much weight to the scales. So I understand it all. I really do. But I'm going to tell you, if you're in denial that fishing has changed, you're missing it, because it has definitely changed. Now, I'm going to tell you, let's go back. I went to New York, and hey, there's some guys that get it and some guys that are not, that they don't really pick up on it as well. I took 2 high school guys fishing one day, and we fished in a tail race behind a dam. And to catch these fish is pretty tricky. They're on an island, and there's a break line there, and you have to keep just enough pressure on your line that your bait doesn't get hung in the rocks, and you have to let it bounce with the current and let the current drag it. And at the end of the little island, there's a big rock, and then when you get it over that rock, if you'll feed that line back to it, it falls in the place that those fish are hiding out of that current, and they'll hit that bait. If you hold a tight line when you come off of that rock, then the current will wash it, and it will never land into that zone where that water's eddy, where those fish are hiding. Yeah. So you don't catch fish. One of the kids that I was fishing with, he got it, man. He got it. And he also figured out if you throw too far up current, you're not in control of your bait well enough that you can let the current wash it. So it'll wash it in a rock and you're hung up. If you throw downstream, it'll just wash it out and your bait will never get to the bottom because the current's swift enough that it'll hold your bait up off the bottom, so you never make contact with the bottom, you don't catch any fish. This one kid picked up on that really quick, and he learned that, and he caught them. The other kid, who could cast just as good as he could cast, who could handle a rod just as good as he handled it, could do the hook set just as good, he didn't figure out, and he didn't stay in contact with that bait, and he didn't figure it out. It's the same thing up there in New York. My grandson, Cade, he picked up on something. And I'm telling you, they taught me things. One, we're fishing in a river where there's a lot of current, one of the spots. And if you cast too far forward, the current will pin your bait. Fishing a little lead head grub, a little drop shot, a little shaky head, a little swim bait, and it's shallow water, current. If you cast too far forward, the current will pin your bait up against a rock and you're hung up. If you fish downstream, you're probably not going to get as many bites because you're coming against the current, and the current's so swift it keeps your bait up off the bottom. So the trick is to cast to the side at the right, not too far forward, not too far backward, just right, and let your bait drift. And that way, if the current pins it up against a rock, you can shake it and drop slack it, and you're not hung up. But if you throw too far forward, you're hung up, and ain't nothing you can do about it but either break it off or go get it. So these kids figured this out. Boone and Cade figured it out. Cade, he's 13 years old, man. He figured it out. He's wearing me out. And Papa, you're casting too far forward. That's why you get hung up. Oh, okay. Well, it didn't take me long. I figured out he's spot on. He's dead right. But with all that being said, fishing ability, understanding the water, taking advantages of the right presentation, you're going to catch the most fish. But the fish are easy. Yeah. They're easy. I mean, we're catching 50, 60, 70 a day.
It's just knowing the current. It's the current that's the hard part, the conditions.
The guy that figures that out, figures out how to make the right presentation and figures out the right little swim bait and the right color, he's going to catch the most fish. Right. But you're going to catch a lot of fish anyway.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's easier. Now, I will tell you, I'm going to give a shout out to my sponsor, ARC. ARC's got a jerkbait. That jerkbait is awesome. And I told one of my buddies, he said, I caught a pretty good one. And he said, man, what'd you catch that good fish on? I said, I caught it on a jerkbait. He said, I hadn't caught any fish on a jerkbait. I'm throwing such and such and such and such. I said, well, I'm throwing this ARC. And I showed it to him. He said, I don't have one like that. And I said, it's a really unique jerkbait. He said, but I got one that I think is just as good. It looks a lot. I said, okay, good. So he said, how many fish do you catch on a jerkbait? I said, I probably caught 20, 25. And I'm catching my bigger fish on that ARC jerkbait. Well, 3 or 4 different guys in our group were throwing a jerkbait. Nobody was catching them. Mm-hmm. So that ARC jerkbait was hammering them. Yeah. But I caught them. And so it made a difference. But now they caught them on different swim baits that I wasn't catching them on. So the better fishermen still going to catch the most fish, but my point of view is it's easy. And even though you don't have the exact best color, you don't have the exact bait, you're still going to catch fish because the fish are pretty aggressive. Mm. But you take that same scenario and you go down to Lake Murray or to Monticello or Santee Cooper or Sam Rayburn, Texas, or the lakes all over this United States of America that we live in, other than the Great Lakes where you got 400,000 surface acres of water and fishing pressure doesn't have near the negative effect. I mean, these lakes are hammered and they're not easy. And if you don't have the right bait, you don't make the right presentation, it isn't the difference between catching 20 or 50. It's the difference in catching 5 or 0.
Right. Mm.
So yesterday I go to Lake Murray. And I say yesterday, this podcast might not air tomorrow. It may be next week.
It will be. It will be next week.
Yeah, so we did 2 in a row because we had an interesting topic. Tell me what you said that I told you to save.
I was talking about where bass fishing was going, how if it's relevant, like you don't need all the fancy technology and stuff to catch a stringer, because you had just told a story about a man that had a carved out cypress boat, and you had this big fancy ridiculously wrapped Ranger boat and all this fancy equipment. And at the end of the day, y'all both had gone out. At the very end of the day, you come back and he asked you, he said, well, I got to ask, how many fish did you catch? And you said, I got to be honest with you, I didn't catch any. And you said this man had about 50 pounds worth of fish in his boat. And you figured that because of his boat and the type of paddle that he had, that he went to the shallow water and he figured it out more than you did. But I was just saying, well, that proves the point that it's about what you know up here and knowing your conditions and how to properly fish than it is about the equipment and everything else. I feel like, well, like you said, that's just the tools of the job. If you don't know how to do the job and you don't know how to use the tools, then you might as well forget it.
I'm hopefully that I pointed that out, that the guy that figures out to use that current to your advantage, mm-hmm. the guy that figures out how to stay in contact with the bait and let that bait wash into that particular area where the fish are holding, that is skill, that is mental awareness, that is technique. I'm hoping I made that point of view and established that. The guy that is the better fisherman is going to catch the most fish most of the time. Not always. There's some injustice. Sometimes the guy will I had to tell this one story, and I'll tell it really quickly. Sam Rayburn, Texas, to beat Denny Breyer. It was a Denny Breyer event year after year. Denny was so good at Rayburn. He had it figured out, and it fit his technique and his style, and he developed. And Denny Breyer was just hard to beat on Rayburn. And I had a pretty good pattern, and I felt like I could be competitive. Now, I didn't know if I was going to beat Denny, but I really felt like I had a shot to win this tournament. Yeah. And I had gone up the river, and I had a partner whose pitching and flipping skills were not the best, and I was pretty good at it. And I saw there was a cypress tree, not a cypress tree, I'm sorry. There was a willow tree that had a big fork in it, and there was a log between it. And I could see with my solar bat sunglasses, polarized lenses.
Yes.
I could see this big giant female underneath that log between those two willow tree. And I knew it was going to take a special cast, but I felt like I could put that bait in there, and I felt like I could catch that fish. I did not flip to that fish. I saw that fish there in practice. This fish was probably between 9 and 10 pounds in my mind. I didn't really know how big. I knew it was a giant fish, and I knew with the limit of fish I was catching, if I put myself in a position that the last day of the tournament, that fish could mean the difference between me winning and not winning. So I had we fished a 7-fish limit back in those days. And I'm building up to the injustice in fishing. And my partner, he was a good guy, but he couldn't flip worth a nickel, to be honest. And so I knew he wasn't going to catch this fish because, you're going to have to be spot on. You're going to have to put that thing on the dime. And like I say, I was young and I was pretty active, but I was pretty good at it. And so I get my boat in position. We go up there. I got 6 fish. It was a 7-fish limit. I got 6 fish, and I got 6 good ones. Boy, I thought, man, if I could top this thing off with this 9-pounder or 10-pounder, whatever it weighed, I was going to be awesome. I beat Danny. And so we go in there, and I'm being courteous, and I allowed him to flip first, but he wasn't in the best position to make the right flip, so I knew he didn't have a chance to get that bait where it needed to go. So I wasn't being as courteous as it appears. I had him right where I wanted. That rascal flipped that thing in there about 3 times harder than it needed to flip, hit the one cypress willow tree, bounced off, hit the other willow tree, and fell on that log right in the crotch of those 2 trees, and he just eased it off, and that big fish ate it, and he caught it. Weighed 9-12, big fish of the tournament. I would have won the tournament.
Make you sick?
I could have thrown up. I played like I was happy for him, but I was lying through my teeth. I pretended I was so glad for him. I could have died. I could have cut my wrists and bled on the bow of my boat, but that's some of the injustices in fishing. He didn't deserve that fish. I had it all strategically planned out, and man, he caught that thing. It was just crazy. And it wrapped him around a tree, and he had 2 light lines. It just all the things worked, and he got that fish. And it was Big Fish tournament. He won a boat, and he had no clue it was even there. I knew exactly where it was. I knew exactly how you needed to pitch, and man, he caught it. So there's injustices, but for the most part, the best fisherman is going to win out at the end of the day. Right. So we go up there in New York, and we figure all this stuff out. Cade's got it going on. Cade catches a smallmouth over 7 pounds at 13 years old. I didn't catch a fish over a smallmouth over 7 pounds until about 3 years ago. So I was 69 years old when I caught my first 7-pound smallmouth, and here Cade is 13 years old. Boone also has done the same thing. Both caught giant smallmouth. But the best fisherman usually catches the most fish, but we catch a lot of fish, and you can do a lot of different things. It's such a variety. When we come in at the end of the day at New York, this guy caught him on a sinking worm. This guy caught him on a swim bait. This guy caught him on a grub. This guy caught him on a drop shot. This guy caught him on a spinnerbait. This guy caught him on a jerk bait. It's just such a variety. And this guy caught him in the current. This guy caught him out in the lake. This guy caught him off of points. This guy caught him up the creek. This guy did this. It's a body of water. It doesn't get as much fishing pressure, and there are just a lot of working patterns going on. So now you go to Lake Murray. You put your boat in before daylight on a weekday, and you got to stand in line at the state park to get your boat in. And it sounds like a tournament. All the boats running all over the lake. Yum, 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 yum. So this is an everyday thing. Every day, every single day, this lake gets hammered and hammered. And then there's big tournaments, and it gets hammered. And it's amazing that you ever catch a fish at all. So I'm excited because the bait fish in that lake are blueback heron. Blueback herons spawn. They get on rocky points and they spawn. And when they do, the bass come in there and they feed on them. And it is just unbelievable how excited these bass get on herding these bluebacks up on these points. And it's easy fishing. You catch them on top water. And Arc's got the perfect top water bait. I mean, it fishes like a pencil popper and Zara spook bred together. And it's just the perfect bait for that. And yesterday was perfect conditions. In the old days, we would go to a point where fish were schooling and had a lot of pressure on them, and you would physically see them breaking water, and you could not catch them. And it's the single most frustrating thing you ever do. The hot water at Lake Norman, down at the nuclear plant, and the water runs out, and these fish school, and they school, and they school, and you can't hardly catch them. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't hardly catch them. It's just so frustrating. Well, now we've got forward-facing sonar, so we didn't know that there were fish on all these places that we weren't catching. The only time we knew we weren't catching them is when we saw them physically breaking the surface, feeding on shad. Well, now you can see them on forward-facing sonar and realize they're there, and you're not catching. Mm-hmm. So it's double frustrating. So yesterday I go to Murray, and the herring spawn is on. One thing, I don't think there's as many blueback heron in Lake Murray as there once was, because at one time, 10 years ago, it seemed like every point would have heron on it. And now it's about every 15th or 20th rocky point. So there are less heron spawn going on. And then when you go, these fish won't hardly hit the top water. Used to, they would eat it up, man. It was so easy. When you got there and that they were chasing those herring up, I mean, it was a slam dunk. You throw that top water bait in there and start walking it, you're going to catch one. Mm. Man, I fished for 2.5 hours yesterday morning on a herring bite and did not catch one. Did not catch one. I had 2 fish blow up behind my top water bait, but not one of them made it. And very, very disappointing for me, because I got down there before daylight. I was on a point where there were 4 or 5 big blue heron and seagulls, so I knew the bait was there. And as soon as it started cracking daylight, I'd see a swirl, I'd see one bust. Man, I couldn't catch them. In the old days, 10 years ago, you throw that bait up there and it's a slam dunk. Well, it's not a slam dunk anymore. They've already been caught and released, caught and released, caught and released every day. So they're very leery. The only time you catch one almost is when you hit him on the head. When he jumps chasing a heron and you put that bait right there, right now, and you might catch it. But there was another boat there that, man, they were breaking all around him, so I knew he was killing them. And so just as it worked out, he and I, 45 minutes later, ended up on the same little island. He came around the point over there. And so I figured when they were in those breaking fish, it was 2 guys in the boat. I figured they caught them good. And I said, "You guys, how many you got?" He said, "We ain't caught a fish. We've been like a label on a bottle. We've been all around it. We just ain't been in it. We can't get them to bite." And I said, I'm doing the same thing. He said, "Oh, come on, I know you're catching them." I said, I ain't caught a fish. I've had 2 or 3 blow up behind it. He said, "What's wrong with these fish?" Well, what's wrong with them is they get hammered. They've been caught, released, caught, released, caught, released. They know the game. And so if you don't change and adapt, you're not going to catch them. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're not going to catch them.
Right.
In the old days, you put 20-pound tail flying on the top water bait, and you go in there and they're schooling on herring, and boom, 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 you catch them.
Back to back, yeah.
Now, you better put on some 6 or 8 pound line, fluoro, put you on a 1/4 ounce jig head and get you a little swim bait that looks exactly like a blueback heron. I mean, color's more critical than it's ever been. The action of the bait's more critical. The presentation, everything. Mm-hmm. It has changed. No matter what anybody says, in my mind, I have proven it over and over and over again. Because primarily of fishing pressure, they're much more difficult. I did a podcast a couple weeks ago on bacon Bait and Tackle out in Shreveport, where they made the Devil Horse, and they made lots of different unique design baits, put frog skin. It was really a great place to go, and if you really want to see a museum, go to Bait and Tackle in Shreveport and just get a tour. Michael Bacon gave me a tour. It was awesome, but it's primitive compared to where we are today.
Right.
It's primitive compared to the big heavy line we used to fish, and these fish have figured it out. They've been pressured to the point. You know, a fish doesn't have a mind or reason like a human being, but they got a tremendous instinct, and that instinct to survive. Yeah. And so, you know, they see a shadow come across the water from a big bird, they dive down deep. Well, now their biggest predator is the angler. We're their number one predator. So they hear that boat stop, that motor crank outboard turn off. They hear that trolling motor being deployed. If you're using a brushless Minn Kota trolling motor, they don't hear that. It's the most awesome thing. Right. Boy, where we've come with that. But that's a whole different story. But they know. They know when you bang on the bottom of the boat. They know when you cast a lure in, because their instincts have tied that to danger because they've been caught so many times. Now, this is my own personal theory, but I'm just telling you from everything I see. And this is not just based on a current trip that I made to New York and a current trip that I made to Lake Murray. This is something that I've been looking at now for about 2 or 3 years. Probably 4 years, ever since I started fishing with forward-facing sonar. I never realized a lot of things that are taking place with fish, that there were so many fish in an area that just were not biting. I never realized that there was a method and a technique and a lure and a presentation, had you put it all together, they were catchable. I was fishing by them and past them and over them and never getting a bite, not even knowing they were there. Well, now I know they're there, and I'm still not catching them. Right. So there's a lot more to it. And some of these younger guys, I watched, and it just fascinates me at the amount of weight that they caught. I watched the Lake Fork Elite tournament the other day, the BASS tournament on, I think it was on Fox, but I watched that tournament, and I watched those guys catch those. I'm going to say kids. They're not all kids, but pretty close. And they're so smart. And they were so different, fishing so different than we've ever fished before. And they were figuring things out. I read where the winner was telling me he used a 360 Humminbird to determine hard spots, that he concentrated on those hard spots. Now, even with forward-facing sonar, the big technique that everybody's used is they watch the fish, they watch the bait, they watch the fish come and eat it. Now, these fish are wising up to that. So it's not necessarily watching him, it's seeing him frequent a hard spot in the lake and just constantly throwing to that hard spot with a swim bait. They even use some crankbaits and different techniques than I'd ever seen before with forward-facing sonar. So they're learning that these fish behave different. Now, we learned in my day, I didn't realize you could catch fish in muddy water. But a guy named Key Biggers from Charlotte, North Carolina, won a tournament on Lake Wiley. And when he won the tournament, he said, you know, I kept going up the South Fork River, and the muddier the water got, the bigger the fish. I never knew that. But I took that information, and I believed him, and I found that to be true. And so now, before, when I would turn around because the water's too muddy, I had a method and a technique that I could catch them in that muddy water, where if you were a plastic worm fisherman or a crankbait fisherman, you're probably not going to catch them. Right. But there was a lure and a method for catching those fish in that muddy water. So I learned that, and I was able to play it. All right, these kids now, these fishermen, I shouldn't call them kids, these fishermen everybody's a kid when you're my age. These fishermen today have figured out a method to catch these fish that are behaving different than we've ever known. And fishing is different. And all this fancy equipment that you talked about is important.
So you're saying, too, you don't think all the people that are saying, oh, we just need to go back to the old ways, you don't think the old ways would even work anymore?
They're not going to work as well. They're not nearly as effective. You won't catch nearly as many fish.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. People say, well, we caught plenty. You won't catch as many as you used to. You will not catch as many fish as you used to. I used to go to Lake Murray on the herring bite in the herring spawn and take a topwater bait and catch 30 or 40 fish and catch some big ones. I didn't catch a fish yesterday. I sat there with another boat that was in them breaking all around them, and they didn't catch a fish. They did not catch a fish. A fish did not catch a bass. 10 years ago, you'd have hammered them. So you got to change with the times. Whether you like it, whether you don't like it, whether you don't like the expense that's involved, if you're going to catch them like you used to catch them. Now, if you're happy, and that's fine. I'm not saying it's anything wrong.
Right.
If you're happy with going out there and spending the day and catching one or two, that's fine. But if you go with the expectations that I'm going to catch 20 or 25 or 30 like I used to, you're going to be disappointed.
Right. Well, it's like you said, it's an adaptive behavior. I feel like that would only be true that they would hammer them like the old days if it's on like a completely private lake that has zero pressure whatsoever, because they're just going to be kind of more in their default senses, you know, so you would have the freedom to fish the way that you used to and still hammer them. But in public waters, I think that's very true. I think that they have become very adapted to their surroundings. I don't think fish are as stupid as people think that they are. People always say dogs are stupid too, but I mean, you can teach a dog a trick and a dog will know not to bite something if, you know, something bad happens to them. So,
well,
I mean,
it is.
It's learned behavior.
You're talking about training. We've trained these fish what not to do.
Literally.
We've trained them. I think sometimes they look down there and they look at each other and say, really? Can you believe that guy's
get a load of this guy?
Can you believe that? Oh, my Lord, how many of these things have we seen? This guy's an idiot. I mean, I can see them doing that. I mean, it's, you know, John Powell, the late, great John Powell, who's a Hall of Fame bass fisherman, John Powell said that catch and release is going to be the best thing to preserve the number of fish in public lakes, but it's going to be the most difficult thing for anglers because we're going to teach those fish.
Yeah. They're running down there and they're telling their friends.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it goes that far, but I will tell you this, and I've talked about this before on a previous podcast. When the buzzbait first came out, you could go to a farm pond where the bass in that farm pond had never seen a buzzbait. I think you catch every fish in there.
Yeah.
Man, they fell for that thing. It was just something special about it, man. And if the temperature, the water was right, and the conditions were good, a little cloudy day, you could catch every single bass in that farm pond. You go back a week later, you might catch half as many as you caught the first trip. You go back another week after that, and you might catch, you know, a handful. And you go back then and you get down to one or two. They quit biting it. That's happened on public water so many times. When they first came out with the Cinco, I think you catch every fish in the lake. Just like with the buzzbait early on. I remember when we first started getting out on the ledges, taking those deep diving crankbaits that go 20 feet deep. Those fish had never seen them before. You get out on those ledges on Lake Wiley and Kentucky Lake and Barkley, and you could hammer. It's over with, boys. It don't happen like that. Look at David Fritz. David Fritz is a master, absolutely master. I don't think there's been a better guy to take a big, deep crankbait and catch a string of fish, David. He don't catch them like he used to. Right. Nowhere near. And he would be the first one to tell you that. It's different. Man, you got to change up. You got to use lighter line. You got to use tighter wiggles. You got to change this color. You got to do this. You got to do that. In the old days, you didn't have to do none of that. These fish have caught on. They've wised up. So if you're not willing to adapt to the change, you need to adjust your expectations on how many fish you're going to catch.
Right.
It's a different world. It's a different world. It's a different time. And I'm not saying that you have to have forward facing sonar, that you have to have 360, that you have to have target lock, that you have to, but I'm going to tell you, it makes it a whole lot easier. A guy told me, and I'm dumb. I don't know a lot, but I fished with Britt Myers Jr. And Britt Myers Jr. was just an expert. And I wanted to have a benchmark for what I was expecting from my electronics. And this kid is so good at forward facing. He's good at everything. Now he is not one of those guys that's one dimensional. He'll catch them any way. I'm impressed with Britt Myers Jr. and nice young man. And he was very cordial to me to take me out and show me everything he was doing. And I learned so much from him. I learned a lot. Very cool kid. But I had my trolling motor. I had my forward-facing sonar transducer not on my trolling motor. I had it on a target lock. So after watching him sweep with that trolling motor, I came back and said, you can sweep better with your trolling motor than you can target lock. So I took my target lock off the boat, and I put my Mega Live 2 transducer on my trolling motor. Well, I'm a big dummy. I don't know anything at all about technology. I didn't know with one little button you can make your target lock sweep with your trolling motor. So I'm putting it back on. And so yesterday I didn't have it on. But let me just tell you, if I'd had target lock, I would have been so much more efficient, because what I learned yesterday, and here's what I learned. Let me tell you what I learned. I'm marking these fish, and I'm marking them on every point where there's herring. There's big bass out there just cruising around, looking for an opportunity to eat a herring. But with forward-facing sonar, I'm throwing a little minnow bait on a 1/4 ounce head. These fish are anywhere from 12 to 30 feet deep. And by the time they're cruising, so you see them on a forward-facing sonar, by the time that 1/4 ounce minnow gets there, they're gone. They're gone. So I'm not catching them. It's a very ineffective way to fish. And I'm learning that as time goes on. But if you found a holding point, a rock pile, a brush pile, that they're holding in, then you can make a presentation to them, and you got a good chance of catching them.
Right.
So I go up and I mark them on this brush pile. Well, the wind's blowing just a little bit, and I put a waypoint there where I want the boat to be, but I'm constantly fighting it to get back to it. Had I had my target lock, I could have locked on that brush pile and then put spot lock on my trolling motor, and it would have held me right there, and it would have kept me facing the wind, which is exactly what I needed to make the right presentation with my little minnow to catch the fish.
Wow.
So technology would have made my life so much easier. I fought that dadgum wind to keep the boat in the perfect position. Now I'm going to tell you what I did. I caught about a 4-pounder, and I saw him off the corner of the brush pile. Took me 15 casts. He followed it up, turned around, followed it up, turned it around, followed it up, turned it around. So I let it go just above his head, and I just shook it, and I kept it coming, and I didn't quit on him. I stayed with it all the way, and he hit right at the boat, and I caught it. And I thought, wow, you got to stay with him. I've been giving up on him. When he'd turn around and go back, I'd wind it in. So I learned something from that, and I'm watching him, and I know people don't like that, but nevertheless, that helped me catch that fish that I would not have caught without it. I would not have caught that fish. So then I see another fish, and I swim that bait over the top, and I shake it, and he eats it. He's about a 6-pounder, which is the biggest fish I've ever personally caught using forward-facing sonar. So I watched him eat it, and I caught him. So then I'm fighting this current. Had I had my target lock, I would have been right there in the perfect position and could have made the presentation. If the wind's blowing your line to the side, you can't fish that 20 foot of water, 18 foot of water effectively, because you can't control your bait. The wind's moving your line and moving your bait faster, and you got to throw directly into the wind. That's one thing. The target lock would have kept me in place to do that. So now I see a fish come up and eat my bait. And it pulls and pulls and pulls. It doesn't try to come up. I'm thinking it's either a big catfish or a striper. Murray's got a lot of stripers in it. So it started pulling so fast and so hard. I'm using 8-pound temps, and I'm using a new line that Berkeley's come out with that it's experimental. They're going to introduce it in just a couple of months at the ICAST, but it is an awesome fluorocarbon line. And I'm not supposed to talk about it, so strike that part. You didn't hear me talk about that. But I'm using this line, and I'm very impressed with it, by the way. I can't wait till it comes on the market, but I didn't say anything about it. So I got this big fish on, and he's pulling like crazy, and I've got 15-pound X5 braid and to this 8-pound leader, and I tied it with a uni knot. That KT knot, I don't get it. I'm not good at it. I can't see well enough. My hands don't work. That KT knot's been a big disappointment to me. So I just went back to my old ways and I tied a uni knot. So I got this fish. So I don't want to put too much pressure on him, and he's pulling like crazy. So I got a big striper. So I finally get him turned, and when I turned him, he's already pulled 80 yards of drag out there. And when I got him turned, he did not try to come to the surface. So now I know for sure it's not a bass. And so it's a big striper, and I'm fighting him, and I get him up next to the boat, and I think he should be ready to give up now. And as a big striper will do, he still had energy, and he ran under the boat, and I had to put my rod down and my reel halfway in the water to keep him from breaking my rod when he went under the boat. And so I fight him out under the boat. I trim my engine up where he's not going to get caught in my engine, and I'm going to get this big striper in the boat. And so I sat down in the passenger seat where I can reach him because I'm an old man and I'm not good on my knees. So I get there and I'm going to pull this fish up. And when he came up, it may have been the biggest bass I've ever had on in my life. This thing was a giant largemouth bass. And when he came up, I could not even see the minnow bait. It's all the way down in his goozle. The first thought I had is, oh no, I hope I don't kill this fish.
Yeah, like he gutted it or something.
Yeah, he ate that thing. And so he ran around. I thought, oh my goodness, this may be the biggest fish in my lifetime. This thing is a giant. And so I brought him back around. He jumped again, and that bait just popped out of his mouth.
Spit it out.
I lost him. I lost that fish. And the whole time I'm totally, absolutely convinced that striper, it wasn't a striper, it was a largemouth bass and a giant, maybe the biggest bass I've ever had on my life. But here's the point. It took a very finesse 8-pound line, 1/4-ounce jig head, little minnow. It took shaking that bait, running over the top of that brush pile multiple times, watching how those fish react to a bait for me to figure out how to catch them.
Right.
Now, I threw a Texas rig plastic worm, as I've always done my whole life, in those brush piles out there in 18, 20 foot of water. I never got a bite. Never got a bite. Fish are suspended up at the top of those brush piles. They weren't down in them. They were suspended up at the top.
Right.
And this little hover technique, you got to get it just right.
Right.
I'm using a 7-foot, 10-inch blues rod that is critical to make what I was doing work. I need that angle of that longer rod. I need that feel of that rod. I need all that stuff. Fancy rods and reels were important to me. I needed that. I was using a hyper mag loose reel. When that fish got on there, I got 8-pound test line. I got tied with a uni knot, so I'm treating it like it's 6-pound line because I don't trust my knot to be 100%. So I need a incredible drag. This fish was extremely powerful, and he went, so I need that hyper mag reel. Right. I need that fancy rod and reel. Had I had a reel that was had a lesser effective drag, he would have broke me off.
Wow.
I need all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So could I have caught the fish without it? Maybe, but a really good chance I wouldn't have.
Right, right.
Now, did I burn them up? I did not. I caught a 4-pounder, a 3-pounder, a 6-pounder, and lost a giant.
Right.
That was my whole day. I spent the vast majority of my day chasing these fish out on these flats and trying to catch them on the top water bait when they were schooling on these herring. None of that worked. The fish moved too fast. If they weren't holding on a brush pile, they moved too fast. By the time I got that bait to them, they were gone. Mm. And when I fished with Britt Myers Jr., we were catching our fish 35 or 45, 50 feet deep. And so how silly is it to be fishing with a little bitty 1/4 ounce or 1/8 ounce jig head on a minnow fishing that deep?
Yeah.
So I'm going to be smart, and I put on a 1/2 ounce head. He said, they won't bite it. I said, what do you mean? He said, when you get it to them, you can't hover it slow enough, shake it, and make the right presentation to get them by it. You can go ahead and try it.
Yeah.
And I wish you would try it, because maybe you'll teach me something. But from everything that I know and what I've seen, you got to use a 3/8 head at the most to get that bait where you can hover it over their head to get them to bite it. And if you get it down to their level or below them, a largemouth won't bite it. You might catch a spotted bass and you might catch a smallmouth. But if you drop that bait below them, from everything that I've learned, you can't. So you got to hover it, and you got to get it the right speed, and you got to shake it. Mm-hmm. That's all completely new to me. That made that's something I've never done in my life. So he gave me a lesson that really helped me, and he was right. He was right. You put that heavier head, you could get it to them a lot quicker, but they wouldn't bite it. You could sit there and it just didn't have the same action. And you couldn't hover it at the right speed. You'd pull it away from them too fast, and they were pretty lethargic. It was wintertime, and they wouldn't bite it. So that hovering method and technique is critical for catching them. And these guys have figured all that stuff out, and it's all news to me. And people say, well, I hate all that. I wish you wouldn't even talk about it. It's okay. You don't have to use it. You don't have to believe in it. But I'm just telling you, the times, as Bob Dylan said, the times, they are a-changing.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, it still needs to be talked about regardless of your viewpoint on it, at least hear out the different sides. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, that is where the sport's headed. These are things that are new to the sport. They're, well, I'd say mostly established into the sport by now. But just to see where it goes, don't fully thrash something completely off, and you don't even want to hear about what's going on. If you truly care about the sport, you'd want to know where it's headed. Well, in my opinion,
it's a lot of pressure on guys to have to belly up and spend all that money, and I get it, man. I get it. These, my boat is not that much more expensive than my boat was 10 years ago, but I got $40,000 worth of electronics. Yeah. Do you need all that stuff? Man, I didn't even realize until these last several months, maybe a year, that I've really tried to evaluate whether you do need all this stuff. And it's a pain in the hiney. It is a pain to always download and update new softwares, and it's so awesome when the one boat network is working. But you got to call technical support, and you got to get this done, and you got to do this. Now, to me now it's second nature. But I'm so computer illiterate. When I first started, man, I didn't know how to coordinate anything. I didn't know anything about an Ethernet and how to make this unit talk to that unit, how to put my Raptors down. Now I can do all that in my sleep. So it's not a big deal for me now.
Right.
But early on, an old man out there trying to figure out all that technology, I'm just saying, do you need all this stuff? Man, I think I'm going to go back and just put me a trolling motor and a flasher on my boat, and I'm going to go fishing and flip bushes.
Right, yeah.
But I'm going to tell you, you flip in bushes, it ain't like it used to be. It really isn't. Them bushes have been flipped about 2 million times. When we first started flipping, not everybody was doing it. When we first started fishing spinnerbaits in muddy water, not everybody was doing it. When we first started fishing top water baits after blueback herring on a spawn on the rocks, not everybody was doing it. Now everybody is.
Yeah.
So it is not the same.
Right.
And these fish are behaving lots different. Mm-hmm. So if you don't kind of keep up with the times, you're going to get left behind. It's okay. just lower your expectations on how many you're going to catch. And there may be days, there's exceptions to all rules. Mm-hmm. You may go out there on certain days and just take that old crankbait and get out there on that point and hammer them. But I'm going to tell you, there are going to be more days you're not than days that you are from what I see.
Yeah.
From what I see. Mm-hmm. And I'm having to learn how to change. I watched that Lake Fork tournament. All these guys, the whole top 10, they all caught over 100 pounds, and they're all but one. There was one fishing old style, and he caught over 100 pounds, and I think out of the top 10, he finished 10th.
Yeah.
But he was fishing old style. He was flipping and pitching, and he was catching them. But he wasn't catching them giants like all them other guys, and he finished 10th out of the top 10.
Right.
And these other guys were fishing places that traditionally we've never fished before. They were doing things traditionally we've never done before.
Right.
They're adapting. I went to Baden Lake the other day, and I emceed a tournament, and I watched these high school kids. And I'm watching, the kids that I were watching were 12 and 13 years old. I'm watching them throw a bait cast reel, throwing a frog up in the grass, throwing a topwater bait to the edge of the grass. Man, they were making that bait land where I would, where a seasoned fisherman that have made 1 million casts, man, they had the skills to put that little topwater bait and never get hung up in the grass. I watched one for an hour. Never got hung up in the grass, put it right dead where he needed to put it. Wow. And the other one was throwing a frog, and he'd make that frog land so soft in the back of that grass. And he fished it out perfect. And they caught, man. They both had a limit of bass. And they 12 and 13 years old. And they were fishing like they were in the Bassmaster Classic.
Well, that circles back to what we said. I think it was in the last week's podcast when we were talking about people that grow up watching the pros. They're automatically learning by watching you already on television, on social media, whatever else. There's more resources out there available that they are able to learn and pick up on that a lot faster. That's what I'm saying. Each generation that goes by, they're a more advanced generation of fishermen because they're getting all the knowledge that was already passed down. Like y'all already pioneered the way through. You all had to figure it out. They don't have to figure that out because you can just tell them, they'll learn that from y'all.
Yeah.
So I feel like that just kind of circles back.
Yeah. The point that I'd like to make out of that with these high school kids is there was a time you could have gone to Baden Lake and that alligator grass had not been fished properly. So you could go in there with your knowledge as a pro. Like not a lot of people fished a frog 10 years ago. Dean Rojas taught us all how to catch fish on a frog anytime, any place, anywhere. I mean, he's an amazing guy. But that was a secret. So you could go to Baden Lake, even though people had fished that grass, they'd thrown spinner baits in it, thrown buzz baits, and maybe a swimming worm or something. Mm-hmm. But nobody had really fished that popping frog or that swimming frog or that walking frog. Nobody ever really done that. And people didn't really have the ability to cast that thing with that little underhanded cast and make it land so soft and easy. Right. And now these high school kids were doing so every day that stuff's getting fished, and it's getting fished correctly. So what you knew 10 years ago or 20 years ago that the rest of the fishing world didn't know. So you went to Baden Lake, even though it had been fished a lot, your method and your technique and your knowledge was going to allow you to catch them because nobody had done what you're able to do. Mm-hmm. That's out the window. That's gone. That's done. That's history. It doesn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. So you don't have that secret. The old days that other people would turn around when the water was muddy because they didn't realize you could take a big bladed spinnerbait and fish the end of those fallen trees and hammer. They'd turn around and go back. So when you went to do that, you had an advantage of knowledge that they didn't have, and your ability to cast that thing underhanded and land soft and having the right equipment to get those big fish out of those trees, you were kind of at a huge advantage. And so you went in there and hammered them. Mm. Now they're getting hammered every day by everybody. You don't have that secret anymore. The word is out. Yeah. The lake is getting hammered. The lake is getting pressured. So you've got to change. You've got to adapt. You've got to, and the fish are behaving different.
Right.
They're not frequenting these spots that get hammered. And when you idle your boat in there, they may not sit still like they used to.
They, like you were saying, they hear that boat, they hear the knock of something in a boat, they're off. They're like, all right, that's my cue to go.
Yeah. So
So
here's my point. Whether you like technology, whether you like change, whether you think it's fair to the old anglers, whether you think it's something that should be outlawed, or whether you don't, regardless of where you stand on the point, the fish are changing.
Right.
And if we're going to catch them, we're going to have to adapt. And for me, and I'm not saying it's the best thing for the tournament world and high school fishing. I'm not saying that. But for me, I love all that technology. I've struggled learning. And I work with Humminbird, and they're so patient. I'm going to tell you right now, the technical support people are so kind, because I know they'd like to come out of the telephone and choke me some of the things. I've held them on the phone. But they've been awesome, and they've walked an old, ignorant man that knows nothing about technology, and they've gotten me pretty much set up. And I love my stuff. I love my equipment. I love what I have. And so to me, all that fancy stuff is almost a necessity, because I have built my expectations based on my history, and I used to go and catch a lot of fish. And now I go and do the same things that I used to do, and I don't. So I've got to adapt to be able to get back and use different methods and different techniques to be able to catch the number of fish that I've grown accustomed to catching over the years. So if you're going to reject all this new technology, and I understand it if you do. Some people say it's not fun. I don't enjoy it. Lindell Martin, a good buddy of mine, he's got Tristan, his grandson, who is just awesome with forward-facing sonar. Linwood said Lindell will go out there and they'll be catching them, and he'll say, Tristan, I've had enough of this. Take me to the bank. I'm going to flip my jig a little while. That's good. That's okay.
To each their own. That's all. To each their own.
Yeah, it's okay. I still like to go chunk that spinnerbait and play like I'm Andy Montgomery and skip that cricket underneath the boat dock. I still love all that. But at the same time, I realize beyond the shadow of a doubt, I'm going to have to mend my ways. I'm going to have to adapt, and I'm going to have to embrace some of this technology that a lot of people are rejecting. And it is vitally important. And I think that Humminbird and Minn Kota and some of the other companies that have been innovative have gotten a lot of unfair criticism. You can't blame them. They're trying to meet consumer demand, and they're trying to be competitive among themselves. So you can't blame them from all the technology advancements, and you don't have to have it. So I don't know. And I know before I'm done, and I'm going to go ahead and hedge some of it off, I'm going to get 10,000 hate mail for even talking about how to use forward-facing sonar. I've said it before, and I said it in the very beginning. I don't know what is best for the sport, but whatever it is, I'm for it. And if it means banning this or banning that, I'm for it. Whatever's best for the sport. But for just going out and going fishing, I have enjoyed the challenge. It has made me face the reality that I can't do what I used to do as effective as I was years ago, because the fish are different. The pressures change things. And the secret's out. Where I used to be able to put a bait where most people couldn't put it, that's gone. All these kids can put it better, as good or better than I can. All the advantages that I had with the knowledge of being able to catch fish in muddy water and running that spinnerbait up to the top and phasing it at the right time and doing all these things. I've wrote article after article about how to do that. I've shown it on television for 40 years. Everybody knows that.
Right.
So I don't have any advantages. So I'm going to have to change. The times are changing. And if I don't adapt and change with it and embrace change, then I'm going to get left behind. And so is everybody else.
I agree with that.
We got to step it up, boys and girls.
I agree with that. Well, with all that being said, we'd like to give a thank you to our sponsors, Mossy Oak, Liqua Moly, and all of the above.
Say that Liqua Moly.
Liqua Moly.
Liqua Moly.
Yes.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to have Gary on the podcast one day and let him explain Liqua Moly. But look for it. Go on the internet, research it. But we appreciate Mossy Oak. They're an awesome company with a heart of conservation, and I like that. So I'm very proud of them, and I'm so grateful for people, Sarah Beth, that's tuning in and watch and listen to us.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got some patience. I can say that.
She talked about me. All right, tell them bye.
All right, bye. See you guys next week.
Hey, thanks for being with us. God bless you. We'll see you next time. I'm Hank Parker.